do it. Everyone can play this game. Everyone can attack and be a heretic. Want to join my club? I think it is important to keep reminding people to be very aware of the programmers, both metaphorical and literal, that everything we're experiencing that comes into us as information from other people's mouths, from computers, from records, from books, from educational facilities, from parents, everything that's coming in is being programmed and edited in advance within the experience, needs, desires of people who are giving it to us. It's always subjective, and usually there's a vested interest behind it. If your mum and dad say, don't read that book, or don't go out tonight at such and such a time, they're saying it sometimes for a very good protective reason, sometimes for their own expediency, and sometimes to mould you in their own image. And virtual reality, when we experienced it, immediately struck me as being incredibly limited by the mind of the programmer, which is not to say that they don't have imagination and they aren't brilliant people, but just nevertheless it's one human being with one brain building an alternate world which can only be built from their own experience and their own daydreams. And I guess our position has always been to empower people to make their own personal daydreams come true, and to build their own universe, omniverse, and to build their own limits, and within those limits to embroider and extend the implications that they discover, so they become initially fully integrated people. But of course the great irony is we become fully integrated and balanced in order to disintegrate, in order to explode into light and not exist, and travel in every direction simultaneously, quake-reversely. And that's the way we receive our omniverse. We share everything that we find and do and feel with past, present and future time. So the editing and the programming, in a sense, contain that which we would like to destroy, dare I say. Destroy, disorientate and disorder. And the chopping up of behaviour patterns, the chopping up of video and television images, the chopping up of newspapers, the chopping up of our own new knowledge each morning, the smashing of the mirror with our image in it, that remembering and reminding that nothing is fixed or should be, that still seems to be the most important activity and tool we can use to survive and evolve and have any kind of self-esteem. There's nothing wrong with self-esteem after all. Of course, what gets stolen from us first by the authorities, the management companies, self-esteem. You can't look after yourself, we must. You don't know best, we do. You don't want that because we say it's not good for you. You want to be ill, don't you? You want to feel scared, don't you? You want to be in fear and submissive and terrified and angry and paranoid and hating everybody and jealous. That's much better for you, isn't it? There, poor little child. Bollocks. The only reason they get away with it is they've got big guns, and basically behind everything they say and everything they accept is a threat. That's all it is, just a threat. Nothing more, nothing less. Bullying. Straightforward, unadulterated, violent bullying. Well, what's the worst they can do to anybody? Hurt them or kill them. It doesn't stop the message. The messages go on, always have done. And the great thing now is that science is actually agreeing with mysticism. The visionaries and the scientists and the technological designers and the artists, the creative thinkers and the psychologists, the therapists and the naturalists, and the shaman and the lama, everybody with a bit of light inside those eyes. What are they saying to us? Actually, it's exactly like this. It's chaos. And isn't it fabulous? Don't underestimate the power of play. Play around. Play for time. Play with everything you get access to. Mess it up. Break it. Rebuild it. Tell everybody else you don't know what the hell you are doing. It seems that we've come to a point where there's two strains, these two basic Western breeds, humane and human being. The mechanical, technological, feudal lord management company, whose basic actions are rearguard actions designed to bolster up, repair, and preserve the apparent physical gains and control gains that they've made to keep the world as it is, and even to go back to how it was when it was somehow, in an abstract way, better, more moral, more robust, and more straightforward. But I see all that as a rearguard action. And during this rearguard action, there'll be mopping up times when the troops go in and they try and pick off a few random dissidents, subversives, make them scapegoats, try and demoralise them, which in itself is an interesting word, demoralise. So on one level they're saying they want to be moral and they want to take the morals out of their enemies. And it's just more destruction, it's just more violence, and it's just more ludicrous all the time. synchronistically, here we all are, looking out at the opposite way of seeing things, the chaotic way that seems to make more sense. And so now we have to embrace the concept of chaos. We have to embrace the ebb and flow of the omniverse. And that's the other breed, the other strain of DNA. Maybe they're even completely separate now. They've got different programmers. I really believe that people who collude in the management companies of this planet believe implicitly and secretly amongst themselves they are superior beings, better able to know the truth, with a God-given right to rule and a God-given right to abuse and destroy those who disagree. I guess we're from the line of the women healers, the 9 million who were burned in the burning times, and the shaman, and the knowing religions and belief systems, and the indigenous people of each land who have been systematically destroyed and abused, and even given intoxicants they can't deal with, like alcohol, to debilitate them. Everything's double talk now, everything's double speak, everything's lies and hypocrisy that comes from the top. And as the top mimics the mother and father concept, and the population is seen as the children of the top, it's not surprising that many people mimic their techniques and use violence and hypocrisy to survive. But it won't work. The trees won't listen and the poets won't listen. And everyone at some point is a young, growing child who knows better than their parents, quite rightly. So the thing is just to speak to each other and embrace each other and communicate with honesty, to be daring, to refuse to collude in the lies and the killing anymore, whatever anyone may say. How was the British Empire destroyed? By a tiny little man called Gandhi, who in a sense did nothing, and by doing nothing destabilized permanently a huge military empire. So one person can do a lot. One empowered, inspired individual can change everything for many others. And since this hyperdelic revolution, and I say hyperdelic to mean technology and computers and telephones and satellites, and anthropology, to take the idea of psychedelic further and beyond psychoactive chemicals into a life attitude and a way of life. This hyperdelic evolution and community is now so large that it cannot be eradicated. It will always return. It's part of the oldest visionary lineage on this particular planet. It's far older than any of the executives in the management company are able to understand. Chop it all up, cut it all up, re-empower yourselves, repossess your own space. That's all there is to do. And believe me, it causes great mischief in those secret corridors of power. This postcard from exile is brought to you by
the Transmedia Foundation.
Camera work by Jamal A. Special thanks to
Millie.
Who's that?
Dickie.
Timothy Leary.
Frankie.
Cindy and Michael Horror.
And
The more radical thinkers and experimenters of each kind. As irony would have it, I cannot be with you in person, unless you count the digital image as real, and that's open to a lot of conjecture. I'm an exile, basically. I'm a fugitive in a sense, and I'm a fugitive for my exploration of sense and senses. As I recall, before I left Great Britain in November 1991, some of the topics that were going to be discussed at this symposium were such things as the way the mass media had treated pharmacon, psychedelic drugs, consciousness expansion since the 50s and 60s till the present day, the way that the management companies, as I tend to call all governments now, or government, M-E-A-N-T, management, the idea that in fact all that's left now is no longer a political system, but a system of managing, of getting by, and of managing and controlling and directing all of you and ourselves, and those selves include our concept of ourself, S-E-L-F. These words are important, breaking them down is important, because basically we're talking about disorder, disorderly conduct, basically, of which I hope to be an ongoing, continual protagonist and explorer. The main intention of appearing with you in this form is as a gesture, basically, and a connection, and also as a demonstration of what, in a sense, is our major weapon. So what we're now dealing with over here with people we've been networking, over here being somewhere else on this very large globe, somewhere a lot larger than the little pimple of politics called Great Britain, somewhere full of trees, what can I say? And what we're basically trying to deal with now is where you go from the point of psychedelic community, what happens next. And so what we're really talking about is evolution, the possibility that it exists, and if so, the way it can be facilitated. Next year is the 50th anniversary of Albert Hoffman's bicycle ride in Switzerland. I think it's April 16th, and there will be a celebration and a memorial service in a sense, where people will ride bicycles along the same route and probably imbibe illegal chemicals and recreate en masse the revolutionary moment that happened after the research into ergotamine. 50 years, it's not much really. Hardly less than communism lasted, or a lot of different cults of this century have lasted. Probably a little less than capitalism will last, just because they've got the biggest guns. But we have to sit back and address the question of what happened those 50 years ago, and is it relevant in any way whatsoever? My answer to that obviously would be yes, it is. It's relevant enough for people like Dr. Leary to be, as of now, still banned from Great Britain. And now, of course, by devious means, the new system of banning myself as well. Quite weird being in this position, this situation, trying to explain things and be spontaneous with it. Of course, this is a contrived situation, contrived medium. But here we are, together at last. psychedelics, 50 years. To me, one of the big keys, the big points that could be made about this is that throughout human history, from the times of the cavemen in the caves and the beginning of the concept of the keepers of the magic knowledge, the secret knowledge, the name of the domain, there's always been some form of basic hierarchical system, chief priest, chief shaman, the goddess, and so on. And there were the assigned and trained keepers of the secret knowledge. The secret knowledge normally being that received through revelation and illumination by seers. Now all those three words refer to light, illumination, revelation, visionary, seer. So what we're talking about is what people see and what is contained within light. It's not a verbal language, it's an image language. It's the language of light, of lasers, and now in this time, digital language. I don't like to speak to you like this. It's very relaxing. So in those ancient days, people would find different ways to be intoxicated. And they would find different plants and different organic substances which would take them out of themselves into mystical realms, different paths of enlightenment, which of course is a word enlight. Enlight means literally that in light is meant. To be in light is what is meant for us as humane beings. And the E on humane I put there for the word evolution. So we return to the concept of light and evolution many times. The possessors of and the controllers of illumination, of visionary experience, basically became the feudal lords, the owners of land, and by owning the land, owning in a sense the earth, or trying to claim the earth itself as their possession. Now we all know that's not possible, and we've all seen the results of this possession of the earth. It's just not scientifically possible to maintain the status quo in a state of flux. For a long time we've been saying that Britain, Great Britain, was actually still a feudal society, and that basically the police and the army and the church served the ends and the potential and continuing power of a ruling elite. That's a basic simplicity, that's a basic thing we'll say we know. And in fact, to what extent is this buried in us? To what extent is it part of our DNA imprint? How much do we actually become submissive to a dream that we do not subscribe to?
What you're asking is, can DNA be controlled? How is it manipulated?
Yeah, is DNA controlled, or is it that we are just simply controlled by DNA? If we are controlled by DNA, by all the cultural memes which go with it, the imprints, the ways that we're trained to behave, think, respond, if we actually are controlled by that, then the key to evolution and change, the key to disintegrating this management company in order to rebuild a global community is to access the language of DNA and thereby travel back and forth in order to facilitate changes in ourselves, to re-mind ourselves, to take this mind we inherit and build it according to our own parameters. Now, just as people assume that something like a computer game or digital information and virtual reality are ways of liberating ourselves, when in fact they are not. And they are not because the programmer is the one who decides the limits. Their imagination then needs their idea and concept of exploration separation is where each virtual reality program will end. In the same way, there is a program in DNA which also has its limits, which also has been gradually imprinted by thousands of years of social control, management. Both these systems have to be shattered. All systems have to be fragmented and shattered, disordered, as I said, in order for us to have any chance of becoming ourselves or disintegrating into something more incredible, an evolutionary step. That's what we're aiming for. That's what I believe we're aiming for. Nothing less will do. A visionary experience. The moment, the moment when we no longer exist as ourselves and become what people call light. So, what I'm saying is that even with psychedelic drugs, you are limited by the internal programming, the imprints, the conditioning, call it what you will, the DNA, and the environment. That means to me that psychoactive enhancers, psychedelic experiences are not in any way apolitical, because when you drop this chemical bomb into your neurology, your neurosystem, you are triggering, accessing and disassembling, you are cutting up all your previous inherited perceptions of what we sadly call reality. That is a political act, make no mistake. And if you need evidence that it's political, think about the first wave of the psychedelic revolution or evolution, when communes, gay rights, all kinds of social and political and artistic and musical and graphic and commercial developments took place. This was no accident, this was actually inevitable. And it was these spin-off manifestations which were the real threat to the management company. If you'll go along with me for a minute and accept that this is a political as well as a personal evolutionary arena, I'll try and explain why I feel with my experience that it is so important to continue and to expand upon this path. When the people who own the land and the resources and the capital suddenly discovered that their lackeys in the ordered churches and their slave priests and priestesses of pseudo-illumination were being undermined, they legislated. Why? Because for the first time in humane history, millions of humane beings had had access to that mystical experience, to the visionary bank. This has never happened before. It has always been something kept for the elite. It was never democratized. No one knows the results, no one knows the implications, good or bad, but it's out of Pandora's box, it's out of the rites of Eleusis, it's out of the Catholic Communion, it's out of the Mormon church marriage ceremony with the naked girls being anointed by the elders. It's out of all those safe, ordered, controlled spaces, and it's on the streets. Everyone suddenly has a shamanic experience for a couple of dollars or £1.50. For better or worse, prepared or not, that's what's happening. It's like putting an electric shock through the community. unknown proportions with unknown results. The only known result is it's stealing power from the elite, from the feudal lords, and it's re-empowering, or in a sense, for the first time, truly self-empowering people on the earth. Let me just make one thing clear personally, which is I'm not saying this is either good or bad. I'm not making a judgment. I'm stating an observation, my own personal subjective observation. But I think it's worth noting. I think it's pretty much the same as television appearing around the same time en masse. If television was a drug like thalidomide, it would have been carefully tested and checked and regulated by, what do you have in England now? I don't know, the health service or someone here, they have the FDA. See, I can't even remember my own home country's estimates. But television arrives, no one still to this day has really done checks on its physiological and neurological impact. And no one is really saying very much about its cultural impact, but it was let loose, and the basic intention of the management companies is to have everybody watching television. You have to wonder why. To some extent, it may be that there are two languages of light at the moment. One is the televisual, digitized language, the new Holy Bible, and the other is the self-empowering language of light, which can be accessed in many ways, not just through psychedelic or psychoactive chemicals. We've just been trying to remember where that took us. Right here, putting up the video. And for my sins, here I am, out in the light. Trees, rocks, beautiful holy rocks that contain more memories than most computers. And the redwood trees that breathe much deeper. It's easy to forget what you contain more memories than most computers. The video new cardinal sin. And for my sins, here I am, out in the light. Trees, rocks, beautiful holy rocks that contain more memories than most computers. And the redwood trees that breathe much deeper than we breathe. It's easy to forget what you're trying to say when you get somewhere like this, which is probably a good thing. Come with me for a moment away from these heavy thoughts into our boudoir. Isn't this great? And of course, you can hear the sound of the management company over there, chopping it down, destroying it all for us. Yeah, we're out here just because we started to play with light, basically. All kinds of light. And I even wrote down, strangely enough, a biblical quote just the other night in one of my notebooks. And Jesus said, I am the light and the way. And I just thought, that's interesting. And the way is evolution, boring or not. That's the way. Run up there. There's going to be a note. Evolutionary tools, I guess, has to be the next topic. Cutting up the post-Burroughs, post-Brian Geising, post-Dadaist, post-computer, post-scissors technology. Basically, as far as I see it, the technique of cutting up is one of the most important survival tools that we as a race imagine in very ancient times, somebody would see fire in a tree from lightning, would go out with some of this wood, this tinder, they would collect the fire, take it back to their own chosen tribe, their natural tribe, and they would share the knowledge of how to keep and preserve this fire. Fire itself would improve their lot, would move them forwards in evolution, make them get more skills, more safety, more security. That fire itself was in a sense one of the first tools for survival. If you jump ahead now into the 20th century, we have new mediums of power that we've named. Basically they're called the computer or digital information, and also the televisual video image. They're all made in forms of light, or they can be accessed by laser light. The survival tool we need to use now is almost the opposite of the ancient one. Instead of preserving that light, we have to cut it up, we have to deconstruct it, rip it apart, reassemble it in the way that we choose to make the picture we want, or to just see what's really there. And there's something that the West always calls the unconscious mind, and it usually seems to look down on that unconscious mind as something weak. And the management companies in the West have one basic premise, I suppose, which is to maintain the status quo. Keep everything just the same as it always was, and to assume that it always will be, as it was in the beginning, etc. But of course, modern science states that everything is chaos, everything is always changing, nothing remains the same, even for a nanosecond. Ancient traditions, so-called primitive or uncivilized or third world traditions, have always known as a commonplace fact that nothing is the same, that everything changes, that only one or two things appear to be universal. One of those things is light, is fire. When we first discovered that we were displaced people at the beginning of this year, we were in Nepal, in Kathmandu. We were very lucky to meet the Agori Baba, the sadhu of Shiva, whose basic doctrine is the path of no distinction, that to eat human feces and then eat beautifully cooked chicken, those are the same. That to smell the burning gats, the fires of death outside his chamber, is the same as to smell a beautiful flower or to be out here like this. And inside his small dark chamber there's a fire. It's called the fire of Shiva, and it's been burning for over 1,000 years. No one can remember any longer than that. It's never been allowed to be extinguished. And in the chamber as well are many objects brought to the Baba sometimes by worshippers. Just various things, small objects, bones, skulls, Western trinkets. And whilst we were with him, he would be scooping bits of the white ash from the fire, 1,000-year-old fire, and he would apply it to our foreheads like this. And he gave me his ring that he'd worn for 25 years, and said, "Everything I get given, I give away again." But all the time we were there, he would be doing different positions of asana, and he would be touching, moving, rearranging things, controlling the space, and during that time controlling it and altering it at random. He was also manipulating our consciousness in very subtle ways, invigorating us and protecting us, and analysing what kind of people we might be. We didn't have to explain ourselves or who we were or justify ourselves. we could just sit there with unspoken connections, connections that we would once have called unconscious connections. The same ones you get from a dolphin if you have a good experience in that way. In the same way, you'll be sitting in your rooms, in your environments, your chambers, and one thing that I often used to say before I left Britain was, first change your own bedroom, change your own space. If you do that, then the spaces around it will automatically change too. There will be a resonance, an alteration. Everything you do is part of that chaotic state of flux, that movement. Time is moving in every direction, and so are we. And that's our great weapon. We're aware that we can rearrange and change and manipulate and alter our environment and the information we receive. We can take a video, a VCR recorder, and record off the TV and chop everything up and put it in the order that we like, send it to a friend down a modem, get them to change it. They keep what they like, they throw away what they don't like. They learn how this fixed reality is actually constructed. They learn how to change it. They do their own private manipulations. Every morning, when you wake up, imagine going to the mirror. Look at yourself in the mirror, your complete image, your reflected light. Then smash the mirror and rebuild the picture of yourself the way you would like
my town with a little drop
in the beginning was the word
nobody knows. They're lining up to go insane.
I started to believe that everything was always the same because the name stayed the same. That was a great big mistake. The worst mistake was made. The sacred keepers of the visions, the illumination, were somehow bribed, threatened, told, tempted into writing those visions down, into creating ultimately the Holy Bible. The Holy Bible was the words, not just the actual book that you're so familiar with. The Holy Bible, in a sense, is all books, all fixed words, fixed ideas. In a sense, is the idea of being able to fix things, to keep them linear. In the 50s, and after the Dadaists, Brian Geising and William Burroughs and other people began to cut up and plagiarize, chop up, analyze the power of the word, the power of the written linear word. And as the famous saying goes, what was the idea of cutting it all up? To see what it really says. Not to hear it, not to read it, to see it.
I like my
At that time, it was said that writing
with a little drop of
behind
poison.
in fact, what we don't know.
Nobody knows. They're lining up to go insane. I'm all alone. I smoke my friends down to the filter. But I feel much cleaner after it rains.